Throughout this series, we have covered many subjects related to the electrical forces that fundamentally create, organize, and sustain our world and the greater cosmos. This has brought us to the forefront of cutting-edge science and its emerging connection with the ageless wisdom, where the old and new, ancient and modern are coming together in a new synthesis. And it is only until the light of the higher mind descends into our waking consciousness that the intuition can bring about this pure reason. This spiritual alchemy reflects the interplay of life forces with our own unfolding realizations and consciousness. As energy follows thought, the spiritualized matter or inner fire carries more light and therefore illuminates our life by literally burning away our limitations and hence increasing our power. These are fires of purification. We are all souls incarnate, emanating from a stream on a divine ray, one of 7, and one that will reveal to us our true soul purpose. In order to do this, we need to know our soul ray and the rays of our personality, or at least have a decent idea of what they may be, as these are the specific qualities and faculties we have at our disposal, which in turn will show us where we most naturally fit and what field of service we can most usefully render our skills. Yet first they must be realized, integrated, then harmonized, and brought into active expression in order to function properly and be of service. We have much to discuss and much to ponder. So, once again, it's time to cross the electric bridge. Welcome back to the Electric Bridge. Before we fully dive into this final episode, it will be of use to recap some important highlights. We initially began with a new synthesis showing the emerging discoveries of science and how they correlate with esotericism. This also threw light on the role electricity plays in cosmology, aka the queen of the sciences, which both challenges the standard model as well as brings a profound revelation to it. In the episode after that, we also looked at the electrical dynamics of Earth's climate and weather systems and their connection to our planet's electromagnetic field environment, which in turn is connected to the larger electrical fields of space. From there, we reached further into the cosmos and dived into the cosmic bloodstream of the universal organism. Correlations were made between the electrical properties of our own blood plasma and the electrical properties in the plasma of space, signified by the age-old axiom, as above, so below. We then looked at the role carbon plays in the intelligent organization of substance for the evolution of all life forms. Correlations were made between the 4 basic or classical elements and the hidden 5th or esoteric element, the ether. In the episode after that, we looked at the electrical tension of H2O as the 4th phase of water and how water has a memory of its own. In the last episode, we explored the idea of universal energies and forces from the perspective of their electrical archetypes and power ratios, and how they influence psychological transmutation. This brought us deeper into the teachings of the ageless wisdom. In everything mentioned above, it is all fundamentally related to a running theme in this series. That has been referencing the idea of the 1, the 3, and the 7. Throughout these episodes, the positive and negative forces were considered, as well as the neutral or balancing force between them. And based on their hierarchical arrangement or their power ratios, these 3 fundamental forces become 7. And these 7 electrical types of energy are known as the 7 rays within the ageless wisdom. In this concluding episode, we will bring all our previous insights into summation and elaborate more on this topic of the 7 rays. A proper understanding of it will bring about this new synthesis and connect the many dots together in our endless endeavor to bridge exoteric with esoteric science. In this conclusion of this series, we can finish by briefly looking at a higher type of psychology that governs the consciousness of the spiritually awakening soul. 7 basic tendencies are listed, and a hypothetical correlation can be made between each tendency and one of the 7 rays as the agent that plays a part in electrically impulsing it. Let's get started. Here's a quick recap of the 7 rays from the perspective of their psychological tendencies. Ray of will, the tendency to synthesize. Ray of love wisdom, the quality of the hidden vision. Ray of active intelligence, the urge to formulate the plan. Ray of harmony, the urge to create life through the use of the imagination. Ray of concrete knowledge, the factor of analysis. Ray of devotional idealism, the innate quality to idealize. Ray of ceremonial order, the interplay of the great dualities. The first impulse is the tendency to synthesize. Everything the spiritual student or awakened person does has a synthetic note. The disparate forces that make up your environment and circumstances are being drawn into a dynamic interaction from which unique and previously unknown qualities can now be manifested. This tendency is fired by the inspiration that comes from another factor, the quality of the hidden vision. Meditation raises the mental vibration to the threshold of a new dimension where the vision is sensed and its inner qualities explored and assimilated. They are then held in latency throughout the day and infused into all events and circumstances to further bridge the gap in consciousness between the inner and outer worlds. The quality of the hidden vision is deeply occult and reveals that to which God aspires. While the mystic aspires to unification with God as a divine fixed constant, the occultist regards God as an evolving being, once human, but now much further evolved and on a much higher turn of the spiral. To ponder this important distinction of an evolving God is initially a destabilizing experience, but it helps us to go beyond the limited, conventional ideas about the nature of divinity and discover a fresh sense of awe about the mystery of everything evolving, a journey of ever becoming. Gone is the concept of a static, omniscient God in an equally static heaven, and instead is revealed the ever unfolding dynamic potential of all life, including divinity. And so, returning to another of the conditioning factors of this higher psychology, we have the urge to formulate a plan. It will be apparent that this urge grows out of or is dependent upon the previous two trends considered synthesis and vision. It finds its microcosmic reflection in the many plans and projects of our finite minds as we live our little life or run busy about the planet in connection with our tiny little personal affairs. It is this universal capacity to work and plan which is the guarantee that there exists in mankind the capacity to respond eventually and in group formation to God's plan based on God's vision. This vision of God's plan generates in the spiritual seeker the next tendency, the urge to creative life through the divine use of the imagination. This tendency is a constant subjective impulse to create forms which will express some sensed pervading truth. The Tibetan states, the initiate is essentially one whose whole sense of awareness is occupied with subjective contacts and impacts, and not predominantly preoccupied with the world of outer sense perceptions. This cultivated interest in the inner world of meaning will produce not only a pronounced effect upon the spiritual seeker themselves, but will eventually bring about the emphasis recognized in the collective consciousness of the human race, that the world of meaning is the sole world of reality, because the outer world has no real causal existence and is only a temporary appearance within time and space. This will lead to the production of a truer beauty in the world, and therefore a closer approximation in the world of created forms to the inner emerging truth. In order to remain faithfully aligned with this truth, the new creative work needs the factor of analysis, the fifth psychological factor. It is the ability to distinguish without producing a sense of separateness. It is the right use of emphasis rather than separateness. We emphasize one aspect or quality temporarily excluding or relegating into brief abeyance another aspect or aspects. This is a major part of the activity of the law of cycles. This ability to rightfully emphasize a goal or divine characteristic is powered by the innate quality to idealize. We are told that whether it is the power of the tiny seed to penetrate through its surrounding barriers to emerge into the light, or a human being to rise from death and matter to life in God, it is all idealism. It is the power to recognize ideas and to push forward toward their fulfillment. It is the motive force behind evolution. This power to idealize sees the initiate displaying a seventh tendency as they bring about the interplay of the great dualities to make the dream an unfolding reality. The tendency of the initiate to stand poised on the razor's edge path between the great dualities of spirit and matter, fusing them together to build the new world in accordance with their highest ideals, which in turn are based on the quality of the hidden vision. These 7 tendencies towards soul fusion demonstrate a higher psychology at play in those who are awakening to their true identity as a unit of spiritual electricity in the divine stream of consciousness. All of us here will surely be familiar with these tendencies to some extent, while yet struggling to discipline our threefold personalities sufficiently for them to hold greater sway. This brings us to the revelation that the Antacarana is the electric bridge. Here's something to ponder when reflecting on creative tension, the compression zone in a cosmic Birkeland current shown here in the beautiful picture of the Butterfly Nebula. It provides a beautiful symbol of the point of electromagnetic tension generated in meditation as a prerequisite for building the bridge of lighted substance between the higher and lower mind. The 7 tendencies that define the psychological behavior of the advanced human being are an integral part of the new electrical science of relationships that we have been considering throughout this series. This science will, without a doubt, become the supreme science of the future. It has the power to link the microcosm to the macrocosm and make sense of the universe as one integrated conscious superorganism. Humanity is on a journey toward the intelligent use of electrical force, and for us, symbolized by the construction and mental substance of the transmedium electrical conduit which bridges the gap between our higher and lower selves. We have seen how the electrical alchemist generates a point of magnetic tension in meditation and through it spins threads of light between the higher and lower mind. Group work involves a unified effort to build planetary electric bridges between the superhuman and subhuman kingdoms of nature. As phohotic currents pass down the constructed Antacarana, the group then acts as a capacitor, absorbing and storing the charge, and then stepping it down as a transformer does, so that it can be safely and effectively relayed to the mass or collective consciousness to stimulate and unfold its latent capacity. This transmission of electrical forces is accomplished through our etheric bodies. The electric bridge is an initiative toward this endeavor. The Tibetan tells us the mysteries contain within their formulas and teachings the key to the science which will unlock the mystery of electricity, the greatest spiritual science and area of divine knowledge in the world, the fringes of which have only just been touched. In order to discuss the electric bridge in man, or what is also known as the Antacarana, as an electrical phenomena, the first and most obvious question to address is, what is electricity? What is the attractive force between a positively charged object and a negatively charged one? What is the attractive force between a proton and electron in the heart of an atom? Science knows how electric charge works and behaves well enough, but seems at a loss to actually describe or understand what it is in essence. But then again, science isn't equipped to penetrate this core mystery because electricity is, well, quite literally alive. It's a living entity, something that would probably come as a surprise, even a shock to your local electrician, pun intended. Phohot runs circular errands. This describes the ultimate circuity, the primary electric circuit of the cosmos. Everything in manifestation is a part of one gigantic electric circuit with myriads of smaller circuits existing within larger ones. Furthermore, wherever we have electricity, we have magnetism, as they are two manifestations of the same electromagnetic force. In a simple circuit, such as a ring of copper wire with a battery and a light bulb inserted into it, the outer electrons in the atoms of the copper that make up the wire are loosely bound to one another and are pushed along the wire from atom to atom when the chemical energy of the battery is switched on. This is what we generally understand by the term electric current. But this current doesn't supply any power of its own. For the current flow, the movement of the electrons along the wire is less than a centimeter a minute, and that's direct current, or DC. In our homes, we use AC, or alternating current. And here, the electrons don't flow around the circuit at all. They just vibrate, they jiggle, dance or shuffle back and forth on the spot. So if the electric current moves forward so lethargically, or not at all, what's happening? In fact, in the simple movement of the electrons, we are witnessing the basics of ceremony and ritual. This little electron dance or ceremony is a kind of seventh ray shuffle, for as the ageless wisdom tells us, the seventh ray works in connection with the phenomena of electricity. And this rhythmic motion is part of the invocation rite of Phohot, who, invoked by the chemical reaction in the battery, sweeps through the circle of vibrating electrons to perform its electrifying work. In distinction to the little electron lives who make up the electric current, it is the electromagnetic force field that does the work, lighting up our bulb. A great life has been evoked to do this. Here it rushes into the electron elementals in the filament and stimulates them with its electrical energy to the point that it is converted into light and heat, which then radiates out into the environment. Having covered the basics of electromagnetic circuits, we can now consider the Antacarana itself as an electrical phenomena. An initial sticking point is that the Antacarana is not commonly thought of as a circuit, but more as a bridge across the gap in consciousness that exists between the lower mind of our personality and the higher mind of our soul. However, we will recall that the Antacarana is actually woven around an already existing thread of force that stretches across this chasm. This is the Sutratma, or silver cord, the life thread that stretches from every individualized spark of divinity, or monad, on the highest planes of our solar system, right down through the causal body on the higher mental plane, and then down into our personality in the three lower worlds, delivering the vital energy of life itself and as much of the consciousness of the higher planes that can be registered at any particular personality's stage of unfoldment. When our thoughts are directed back up toward this high source on the spiritual planes in meditation, the Antacarana is woven around the Sutratma, and we have a two-way flow of living, conscious energy, and this completes the photic or electrical circuit. Having established the fact that there's no real communication gap between monad, soul, and personality, other than one of conscious realization, we can help our understanding by considering another electrical phenomena of the physical plane: lightning. How often have we looked in awe at the power of Fohat as it strides across the heavens, throwing down lightning bolts, connecting sky to earth? Again, science flounders in the attempts to explain the thousands of electrical discharges taking place all over the planet at any one time via thunderstorms and lightning. They are generally thought to be due to atmospheric perturbations. In reality, thunderstorms are the exact opposite to what they are currently thought to be. Rather than electrical generators, they are dissipators of energy in an interplanetary circuit, lightning being the spark of a celestial current as it connects to the Earth. This was explored more back in episode 2. So, drawing from a visualization on the Science Hobbyist website, let's imagine for a second going outside in a thunderstorm and slowing everything down 1,000-fold so we can clearly see what's actually occurring in a lightning strike. We're standing outside in this frozen world of a raging thunderstorm. The trees and bushes around us are thrashing, and a few torn shingles flying from the nearby roof hang in the air nearby. High up in the sky, we see a tangled branching network of dimly glowing, wiggly purple lines like a tree root, which are lengthening. Now we notice that everything on the ground is starting to glow. Bits of dim purple fire are popping into existence on the tops of bushes, the edges of the roof of the nearby house, the ends of the tree branches, and the flying pieces of shingles from the roof. Holding our hands out in front of us, we notice that the tips of our fingers are sprouting dim purple fire as well. As we see the purple fire from the sky lengthening and coming downward, the purple fire on all the objects on or close to the ground is becoming more intense and beginning to sprout upwards. The invocation and evocation rite of Fohat is well underway, and the formation of the Antacarana between heaven and earth prevails. As the dim purple lightning from the sky grows downward, it speeds up. We notice that there are streamers going upwards from the tree, the bushes from the roof of the house, and they're all moving toward the incoming lightning strike. As the attraction or charge builds up between the sky and the ground to an irresistible point of tension, the upward growing streamers connect with the downcoming ones. And now Fohat surges forth, and the purple charge turns into the blazing blue-white lightning we are all familiar with. And the voltage difference between sky and earth is neutralized. As an aside, the blue-white flash of light we see in a lightning strike is not Fohat itself. This is the bridge of plasma formed in the air through which it passes, a bridge of nitrogen and oxygen being stripped of its electrons and radiating light and heat as Fohat rushes through it. A channel of air is performing the same function as the tungsten filament does in the light bulb in our circuit. Fohat itself is invisible, intangible, and consists of nothing that the lower senses can detect. This whole example is an analogy for the spiritualization of matter, or the way in which electric dynamism proceeds. And so too is the Antacarana that we are constructing in meditation. The Tibetan talks about the Antacarana being composed of mental substance, or of lighted substance, but then turn to a different page and he tells us that this is just a symbolic way of speaking. This is because, like the electric current in our circuit or the channel of air plasma in the thunderstorm, while the Antacarana can be described as a bridge or conduit composed of matter of the various planes, it is the life that rushes through it that is of our prime interest. In fact, we need to start thinking of ourselves in general as divine projections, force emanations from the divine, electromagnetic field waves rather than identifying ourselves just with our vehicles of matter, regardless of how sublime. Our bodies are like congealed knots of frozen electricity, capacitors storing electric charge at any particular level of the system we focus our consciousness upon. For as we know, energy follows thought. So to continue the lightning analogy, the Antacarana is similar to a connecting bridge of electrical mental substance that connects two terminals of opposite polarity or charge. Through concentrated thinking, we build up charge in our meditation into a point of high electrical tension, like a capacitor, and then we deliberately release it into a surge toward the spiritual triad, our higher spiritual personality, in which the monad emanates. When this has been done, the centers in our lower vehicles take on the role of the light bulb in the circuit, and electromagnetic field waves from the spiritual triad pour into them, whereupon they are converted into a form of assimilating energy that is appropriate for the stimulation of higher human consciousness, in line with the divine plan. When we look at the spiritual evolution of a person, there are many factors to consider and many aspects to relate. In essence, we all experience the same divinity, yet our ray makeup will determine the methods employed, the speed at which we progress, and the specific practices that may be more useful for us personally. To continue with the overall theme of this episode and series, we will look at it from the angle of building the rainbow bridge, or Antacarana, since this is the idea that links all spiritual traditions together. The Antacarana is composed of 3 threads, the life force thread and the consciousness thread. Both exist naturally and emanate from the monad and soul down to the personality. Yet there is another thread which we must create as the personality. This is called the creative thread, and it bridges the gap in consciousness between our higher and lower mind. As we continue to bridge this gap, Fohat is invoked by our successive realizations in consciousness. And this potent spiritual force initiates another force, one not belonging to the higher planes like Fohat, but a force embedded into the very substance of matter. This force is Kundalini, the fire latent within matter itself. At first, it uncoils like a serpent and then begins to move up from the base of the spine to the sacral center in spiralic motion. As this occurs, the Kundalini fire burns away the etheric web related to the lower subplanes within our own etheric body. As Kundalini continues to rise, this continues with all the centers along the central column all the way to the top of the head. As the natural protective barrier between each energy center is burned away, this also brings about the repolarizing of our energy centers. Or from another angle, the atoms of our body become much more luminous as the light of the soul shines forth. Yet, any type of yoga intended to direct the Kundalini fire should always be done wisely and safely. In other words, Let the wisdom of your soul guide the process, and not the ambition of your personality, as it is far too easy to raise this force too prematurely and hence overstimulate your whole system. Each energy center is a whirling vortex of electrical force with a certain charge and polarity. Initially, the lower and higher centers repel each other like magnets, but through our own spiritual alchemy or higher evolution, they are repolarized, and once we reach the major initiations, this is with the sacral center being repolarized to the throat center, the solar plexus with the heart center, and then the base of the spine with the crown or head center. Once done, this completes the electrical circuit within the personality aura at the third initiation. From here, we bridge the gap and our continuity of consciousness extends into the causal body, where the creative thread of the Antacarana reaches the soul. This brings us to the apex point of the human kingdom, where we begin to fully transition into the next kingdom of nature at the fourth initiation. Eventually, we transcend the causal body altogether, and the Antacarana penetrates into the spiritual triad, the higher spiritual personality in which the monad dwells. After this point, we truly step into the fifth kingdom of nature and become a master of the wisdom at the fifth initiation. Fohat is the great electrical force that animates every atom into life, and hence the whole universe into manifestation. It is also the means by which we link our higher and lower nature, bridging the inner and outer worlds, and the Antacarana is our inner instrument by which we fulfill our spiritual destiny. Even though much has been presented throughout this series, it is still the awakened intuition that leads to understanding, and not necessarily the facts or details alone. It is always important to remember this, since the concrete or lower mind can only take us so far, and it is only until the light of the higher mind descends into our waking consciousness that the intuition can bring about this pure reason. We can take the electrical theme right down to the dense physical plane, where lightning storms are constantly taking place in our brains. Even from a solely physical perspective, man is an electrical being relying on the conductive ability of metals to communicate. As we explored in the last episode, the human brain consists of more than 100 billion nerve cells, each possessing around 100,000 connections. And it is the metals, sodium and potassium, acting like batteries which regulate the electrical energy balance in every cell membrane. Indeed, the human being is an electrical entity, and its function is to offer electrical resistance to the inflowing force of Fohat and the qualities it is carrying. Through contact with the lower planes, and specifically within the vital airs and the cavities of the brain, the thought forms we have built light up, acting as filaments or resistors through which Fohat can convert its electrical force into light for the world. To conclude our final episode, let's ponder the meanings of these two quotes, as the key to more advanced work with this service enterprise is to be found therein. There appears a triangle on the mental plane, produced by monastic activity, and this triangle of fire begins slowly to circulate between the monastic permanent atom and a point at the center of the egoic lotus, and thence to the mental unit, which has appeared upon the fourth subplane through innate instinct approximating mentality. This triangle of fire, which is formed of pure electrical monastic force, waxes ever brighter until it produces an answering vibration from both the lower and higher. This triangle is the nucleus of the Antacarana. The work of the highly evolved man is to reduce this triangle to a unity, and by means of high aspiration, which is simply transmuted desire affecting mental matter, turn it into the path, and thus reproduce in a higher synthetic form the earlier path along which the descending spirit or monad came to take possession of its vehicle, the causal body, and from thence again working through the lower personal self. Finally, to end, here's a quote from the Tibetan that explains the importance of starting to think in electrical terms, of viewing life, the universe we live in, and everyone we know from an electrical perspective, and the reason behind the Electric Bridge Initiative on the Arcane School section of the Lucis Trust website. In the future, we shall see each other in all forms of divine manifestation as light units of varying degrees of brightness, and shall talk and think increasingly in terms of electricity, of voltage, of intensity, and of power. The age and status of men in regard to the ladder of evolution will become objectively apparent, thereby re-establishing on Earth the rule of the enlightened. These developments will be the work of the scientists of the next 2 generations and the result of their efforts. Their work with the atom of substance and their investigations in the realm of electricity, of light, and of power must inevitably demonstrate the relation between forms, which is another term for brotherhood, and the fact of the soul, the inner light and radiance of all forms. And with that, this brings us to the end of our episode and the finale of this series. It has been a great joy to have shared this with you, and we hope you have enjoyed our series on the Electric Bridge. Yet there is still more to come from this channel, as future projects are already in the making. So to keep up to date on all content, be sure to subscribe to Monadic Media. And if you're feeling generous, consider contributing to our Patreon, as this helps us produce our work. And if you would like to study the original article from which this video was based, visit the article linked in the video description below. We may have crossed the electric bridge, yet it simply leads to the greater road ahead. We will see you there.